CBS News White House and Foreign Affairs correspondent Margaret Brennan is following the very latest from the White House. So, Margaret, these latest revelations, just another setback for the Trump administration's agenda. Once again, we are not talking about the health care bill or a tax overhaul. We're talking about Russia. That's what's hitting the headlines. What has the reaction been from inside the White House?
Well, there's a ton of frustration because this is, as you say, a distraction, not just because the media focus is on the things that the president's son is saying and the documents that he is showing the public in regard to his communication with a Russian national who he understood to be bringing him damaging information that was said in this email to be part of a Russian government effort to help his father. This is not fake news. This is news from the president's own son that is being reported here. So that White House defense line saying that all of this is a made-up story has been proven wrong with the president's son's own words and written statements here. So there is that complication, but also what the president is trying to do in terms of overhauling health care, something he promised, something he campaigned on, something they are desperate to get done, is going to become more difficult for him politically as they try already to thread the needle to get the Republican senators, many of whom continue to be skeptical of the health care bill as it stands now, to stand with them, to not only work on the legislation, but to vote, put their name right next to President Trump's policies here. And as things get more politically heated and they get more difficult, everything else gets to be a heavier lift, whether it's on Capitol Hill or whether it's any other initiative here. So at a minimum, this is a hit to morale. This is another distraction, but it's more than bad PR. These are ongoing legal issues because now we also understand from lawyers we've spoken to that these questions not only persist through the FBI investigation that's ongoing, but could cause problems for Jared Kushner, the president's son-in-law, who is a White House advisor and holds a security clearance because he not only was copied on these emails with Don Jr., but he was also in that meeting with the Russian lawyer that Don Jr. described in that interview last night.
You mentioned the Russia investigations, plural, there's 3 of them. How significant are these emails, this email chain, when it comes to the Russia investigations?
Well, these emails and this interview came to light because of journalists, not because of investigators. We don't know really much about what Robert Mueller, who is leading the special counsel leading that, where he is in that investigation. He's really kept things very quiet, not made them public in order to, they would say, protect the integrity of that ongoing probe. They're trying to keep it walled off from politics, if that's at all possible. These emails and these disclosures certainly pull on another thread in this storyline, and it has to go. It has to be understood here that this is unquestionably something that the FBI would be looking into, particularly given that this Russian lawyer says, Natalia Veselnitskaya, says that she couldn't get a visa to come to the U.S. initially. It was because of her involvement in a lawsuit, helping in some ways to represent Russian government interests while she was here, that there was reason to be concerned about who she was associated with, and this was something that U.S. government officials would have been tracking at the time. So you have to understand that the FBI is likely going to be looking at why she was seeking a meeting with the then Republican candidate's son, as well as his highest campaign advisors, not only his son-in-law, but Trump campaign chair Paul Manafort, who, as we know, then left the campaign because of some scrutiny regarding his contacts with Russian officials and business interests he had in Ukraine.
Right. Now, Vice President Pence has issued a statement, and he says, quote, that he's not focused on stories about the campaign, particularly stories about the time before he joined the ticket. Do you think he's trying to distance himself from the turmoil going on at the White House?
Well, it's interesting to use the word stories. These aren't just stories. This is public record and testimony from the president's son. So the vice president saying he's not interested in what Donald Trump Jr. is saying and disclosing. But I think you're right to focus on the last bit of that statement from the vice president's office, which is to say, well, you know what, this all happened before he joined the ticket. That's creating some distance for him, and that's important here, not only to keep the vice president's sort of hands clean here. Remember, he has really defended his own integrity and said that his integrity is important to him. It was, of course, Vice President Pence's own concerns about having been, some would say lied to, some would say misled, some would say perhaps this was just a misleading statement from the former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn regarding his contacts with Russian officials that the vice president then went out and publicly represented in a way that didn't match up with the fact. And the vice president has made a virtue of what he said is a desire to remain truthful here. So by continuing to distance himself from the problems with the Trump family's differing accounts or evolving accounts of what happened here, the vice president is trying to remain viable and continue focusing on his work. He's going to be hitting the trail today, heading out to the Midwest and other states to focus on more campaign promises and turning them into legislation. He is, of course, very heavily involved in getting any health care bill passed.
Margaret Brennan, thank you so much.